Well, good morning. Hope you had a great weekend, and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. This is BRN AM for Monday, November 18th, 2019. And here are your top stories. It pays to offer a corporate wellness program, and when 9 to 5 turns into 24/7. It's Social Media Monday, and that means taking a look at the latest retirement and benefit trends in social media. And joining me now to discuss this and a lot more, Senior Financial Services Editor from LinkedIn, Mr. Devin Banerjee. Today joining us from London, England. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Devin.
How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing fine. I just wanted to cover all my bases because I'm horrible with time change.
Hey, it's a global audience on the show, so you got to cover your bases.
And as Jimmy Buffett or someone said, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. So it's good to know. Thanks again for joining us. Really appreciate you doing this. The audience does. So I know we're going to talk about social media trends, and it looks like top on your list, just the broad topic of wellness. So what can you tell us about wellness?
That's absolutely right. So there's some new research and some quantitative data around the value of wellness programs in companies. So you and I have spent a lot of time in the past talking about the allure of companies with wellness programs, especially for younger workers. Well, now Deloitte is out with some recent data about what the return on investment is for companies that invest in wellness programs. So Deloitte actually studied the Canadian market and found that for every dollar invested in wellness programs, especially those around mental health, there was an average yearly return for these companies of about $1.62, or actually $2.18 for programs that have been in place for at least 3 years. So programs that are kind of institutionalized and well broadcast throughout the company. So how is this measured? Well, Deloitte says if you think about the costs of unwellness, as you might say, there are, direct costs. So that's healthcare costs, visits, therapy visits that companies are covering, medication that companies may be covering. They may be covering income support if employees are taking leave, like disability leave, because of wellness or mental health issues. There's also indirect costs, absenteeism, or what Deloitte calls presenteeism, which is basically workers who are not fully present. This is effectively a way of saying, productivity is reduced, basically. Yeah. And then there's employee turnover as well. And so there are all these costs that can be mitigated with kind of proactive wellness programs.
What I like about what you just said, in addition to the over 200% return for every dollar, it sounds like, based on the number of $2.18, which is itself amazing. I love the mental health component of this because in the past, I think this has really been underappreciated, the importance of the mental acuity, the mental health of the individual. And when you're dealing with issues, whether they're your own health issues or those of a parent or a family member or someone that you really care about, that is an incredible drain on a person and their productivity at work. I mean, how can you focus if someone you love is really hurt and hurting?
Yeah, and of course, mental health, can affect everybody, but the biggest component of the workforce, these millennials, people born between 81 and 96 that we talk about all the time, some recent data from Blue Cross Blue Shield is finding that contingent of the workforce is actually the one suffering with chronic conditions like depression, hyperactivity, hypertension the most. And so this debate is really raging right now among companies because its workforce is really feeling it. And so some viewers might ask, what can companies do about this? What are some initial steps? Yeah. Deloitte, actually, the report, which hopefully we can link to in the show notes, has a really nice playbook for how to do this. But at the top of the list is leadership training and return to work programs, actually. So for those who do take leave, for whatever reasons, having an established return to work program and mentorship during that period is very important. And as I said, at the top of the list, leadership training. Leaders need to know how to communicate these values. They also need to walk the walk and lead by example. And so those are at the top of the list for companies.
Yeah, I'm really surprised, Devin, that millennials, being young, usually very healthy, and I'm surprised that they would have the mental anguish that they do. Is that just, and we talked about it on the show, the logjam of being able to ascend through the corporate ladder? Is it work related? Is it just being the stresses of that maybe they put on themselves to succeed and that they have done a lot of their life? I mean, any indication from the report on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a big combination of reasons. Some of the stuff that we've talked about in the past that Deloitte hints at is their financial wellness right now is really creeping into their mental wellness. Mm-hmm. So coming into the workforce around the time of the Great Recession really impacted jobs. This is, of course, a generalization, but really impacted jobs they could get, wages or salaries they could be paid. And then, as we've talked about, you know, they're a lot of them borrowed to go to school, and their loan balances are at an all-time high, north of 1.5 trillion in the U.S. So financial wellness is really not healthy right now. It's not in a good place, and we see that creeping into mental wellness now.
And just because this was a Canadian-based report, what I also like about this is, you know, 20 years ago we didn't have the data sets that we do now, and it sounds like that this is something, a study that could be done in almost any part of the globe to assess the mental state, the health state of folks. We have data, healthcare data, we've got employment data, we've got salary data, and I got to think that this could be applied anywhere around the globe, Devin.
That's absolutely right. And in the next segment, we'll touch on a country that really suffers from this, which is Japan, and what some companies have started to do there. But you're absolutely right that, you know, experts who we featured on the platform talking about this report are really coming out and saying quantifiable data, even if it's in a country that we're not in, even if it's in Canada, quantifiable data for kind of the first time really shows promise of encouraging companies and corporate leaders to start going down this path.
Yeah, and just to kind of tie off the loose ends, I mean, if you are an employer, you should be, in my opinion, asking for some of this data from your benefits broker, your retirement consultant, whomever, to try to build the case for understanding the underpinnings of your employment, of your employees. I think that's what we're saying here, right? I mean, you have the tools available. A lot of that information you wouldn't have to pay for. You can ask because the record keeping systems, the accounting systems have that information. And as the employer, you can digest that. And what a great topic, Devin, to discuss as a retirement or benefits committee, rather than just the usual, how's the return on my investment, or what fees am I paying, which are important. But you know, this is a whole nother avenue you can go down about what your workforce is actually feeling and saying.
I absolutely agree. And you said something almost verbatim that the Deloitte report says, which is a lot of companies already have access to some of this data from their providers and partners, but they've never really looked at it or put it all in one place, or actually just paid attention to it or cared about it. And so hopefully the tide begins to turn with research like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will link to this. So Devin, we're going to take a break. Hang with us in jolly old England. And you too hang out. Don't hang up, but stay with us right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network. Welcome back. Many of us feel compelled to stay in touch with our workplace, regardless of time or place. But is that such a good thing? Devin Banerjee from LinkedIn, joining us from the LinkedIn London office where he's meeting with his associates. Devin, thanks so much for sticking around. We know you're 5 hours ahead of us today, but thanks for doing that.
No problem.
So we talked about health benefits and mental health, and I know in this segment you want to kind of carry it over to focus a little bit more about mental health and the 4-day and the 9-to-5 work week. What can you tell us there?
Yeah, absolutely, Jeff. It's the general topic about balance and just the relationship between work and life, especially among young workers today. And so we featured this item last week called the 9-to-5 is really becoming 24/7. Mm-hmm. There's this expectation of being always on, always connected. And so this was some recent research of workers in the U.S. in their 20s effectively, or between 23 and 29. And fewer than 35% of them indicate that they're working, standard work hours, standard days, 9 to 5. So that's to say about 2/3 or probably more are working more than 9 to 5. They're always on. They believe they should always be connected. And what this research kind of found, taking it forward, is that these demands on young workers, days is starting to really challenge personal relationships. So the majority of these people surveyed said that they're starting to use technology and apps to schedule basic time with their partners, with their family, because their days are getting so compressed and their time is getting so kind of freely shared with their work. And all their other commitments. And this related to another story that we featured about some experiments with the 4-day work week and what data is starting to show there. So Microsoft, which I should disclose is the parent company of LinkedIn, but Microsoft in Japan recently did a 1-month experiment for all of August. It gave about 2,300 full-time employees Friday off for the month of August. And they found that productivity measured by the sales of this team actually jumped 40%. Wow. And we're seeing experiments done by kind of smaller companies around the world, companies much smaller than Microsoft. There's a real estate firm in New Zealand that went public, said they're making a 4-day week permanent for all their workers, because what they found is that job satisfaction rose, stress levels fell among the staff, and they just see that this is doable, and not just doable, but there's no dent to productivity among the staff. And I should say about that Japan study, some people in the conversation came out and said, we're talking about Japan, so it's a place where stress is already very high, so it's kind of coming from a low base. That jump in productivity is kind of coming from a low base. But a lot of experts are thinking about how to pursue models or experiments of a 4-day work week in other countries like the U.S. now.
Yeah, look, we've talked about it in numerous forums between you and I and the rest of the team here at the network. And you do have to have some personal time. You need to have that balance, even if you're a younger person striving to improve upon their career, move up the corporate ladder or wherever you are to move up and gain more expertise in your field. Without that, I just don't see how you enjoy life. And, my personal perspective is that life is to be enjoyed with other people, not just cell phones and iPads and connectivity through work. I think there's a lot more to enjoy about experiences. And I think at some point when you invest so much time into your career, you actually, 10 years down the road will have some level of regret that you didn't travel to Machu Picchu or climb Everest or whatever you're into. So I totally agree with that. I think you need to have some balance there.
Yeah, and that reaction is the natural one that many people have. But what we're starting to see here as I mentioned, and also in the first segment of this program today, is that research is starting to quantify this a lot more and find that for employers, for big companies, there's actual impact on the bottom line, positive impact on the bottom line to be captured if they can start walking this walk, and if they start communicating and leading by example that balance is important, that mental wellness is important, all that kind of stuff. So I love reading research like this and seeing the conversation that comes out from it, because so many people were just kind of craving this quantifiable data, and now it's starting to come out.
Yeah, if I'm the human resource officer, the chief people officer, the diversity officer, whatever the title may be in the organization, I'm hanging on this data. I'm saying, look, we could be Mr. CEO, Ms. CEO. We can be a lot more productive if we rethink our benefits. So this is what I'm taking away from our first and second segments, our employee benefits and our healthcare, and figuring out better mental wellness. And then we can also do better by maybe rethinking how we're allocating time for our senior representatives, or people who have been with us for periods of time. And I think that's a lot to think about. And again, I go back to the retirement committees, which I'm most familiar with. What a great conversation to be having about how we can do things better and improve the relationship we have with our employees, and make things better for them so that they want to stay with us for a longer period of time. I mean, who would want to leave if you have it so good and you go elsewhere just for a couple extra bucks or pounds in your case?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think top of your mind, as top of my mind, is financial wellness. And we're starting to see this relationship between financial wellness and mental wellness, which ties into, job satisfaction and productivity. And so companies can take big strides, I think, with financial wellness and educating workers, especially younger workers, around financial benefits, their 401k plans. As I've said many times on this program and in other places, some of my colleagues here my very smart colleagues at a company like LinkedIn still don't understand their retirement benefits that are available to them. And I spent a lot of time educating them on that. But I think the companies should be doing that better. So it's all connected.
Absolutely. Well, Devin, this is a different week from last week. You were a little pessimistic last week, although we did get off on a high note. But this week, I am off on a very high note. You have really set the tone. We really appreciate you coming on the program, especially when you're 5 hours ahead in London, England. Appreciate it. Safe travels. I know you're on the way to India, if I'm not mistaken, to visit your colleagues there. So safe travels, and we'll talk to you again very soon. Have a great rest of your week.
Sounds good, Jeff. Take care.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Hope you found it enjoyable and educational at the same time. Have a retirement topic or financial topic or someone of interest that you think we should interview? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out today's edition of the Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
But if you're tired of the same